Hey everybody, how's it going? Thanks for joining me this afternoon. I am Auron MacIntyre. When I was a kid, the Olympics were something that were worth looking forward to. It was a massive cultural event. You had the build up in school. Everyone would talk about the different events, the different sporting challenges that would be going on during that Olympics. You used to have the winter and summer games happen at the same time, but eventually they decided to split it up because waiting 4 years was too much. They wanted to go ahead and maximize the amount of money you could make, the amount of times you could hype these things up. And all of this has come to kind of ruin a lot of what the Olympics are, along with the fact that we've basically dissolved nations. It doesn't make a lot of sense to continue to have the Olympics the way that we hold them. However, it's not enough to simply ruin the Olympics as they used to be run. It's important to go ahead and insult the very people that you might be trying to entertain. And so the Olympics, of course, opened infamously this year with a ceremony that mocked Christians, complete with a drag show that went ahead and pantomimed the Last Supper. We'll be getting into this display, what I think it says about the globalist religion that is involved in running an event like this, and why I think this is yet another indication that the woke is not going anywhere. It's not getting put away. The global elites have not taken some kind of off ramp. In fact, they are going to continue to throw this in people's faces, not only because they want to, not because they think it's necessarily the best strategical decision, but they actually have to. The wokeness is integral to the operation of the global empire. You cannot escape it any more than a car can run on, I don't know, water. These things have to have a particular type of fuel. I think wokeness is that fuel that goes ahead and powers the global revolution, and that's why we are going to continue to see it in things like the Olympics. I also want to go ahead and get into the idea that big tech has been moving to strike the record when it comes to the recent failed assassination of Donald Trump. We're seeing evidence that multiple large tech companies, the ones that drive so much of our public opinion with their ability to hide searches, manipulate information, are actively working to go ahead and cover up or remove as much as possible the fact that there was an attempt on Trump's life. Obviously, you can't go ahead and vanish that entirely from the public memory, but it is the small little bits of keeping that from being popping up in people's feeds, keeping it out of their mind. That's what the media is so good at. So we're going to get into all of that, guys. But before we do, let's hear from today's sponsors. Hey guys, I'm sure you know that your metabolism is your body's engine. It's how your body turns the food that you eat into fuel that keeps you going. Because your metabolism is at the center of everything your body does, optimal metabolic health translates into a bunch of benefits, including easier weight management, improved energy levels, better fitness results, and better sleep. Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. Personally, I found it super easy to use. When you wake up in the morning, you just breathe into the Lumen, and the app on the phone tells you what ratio of carbs versus fat you're burning. Then it'll give you suggestions on how to tailor your diet to improve your metabolism. I really like that it also tracks your shift before and after a workout so you can understand how effective your exercise has been. You can track all of your macros in the app, and it serves as a great motivator that allows you to see your results and adjust your plan to optimize your metabolism. So if you want to take the next step in improving your health, go to lumen.me/Auron and use the promo code Auron to get 15% off your Lumen. That's lumen.me/Auron and use Auron at checkout to get 15% off. So, like I said, when I was a kid, the Olympics were a huge deal. I distinctly remember my parents grabbing the newspaper. Yes, it was a physical sheet of paper, an amazing thing to many younger listeners, I'm sure. And they would look at all the different events that were going to be coming on. They would go ahead and decide what we should be watching, go ahead and plan out the schedule of the different the may want to make sure they caught the gymnastics and the diving and the tennis and the wrestling and all these things that would be televised. It was a huge deal. It only happened once every 4 years, and it totally transformed the culture when it would roll through. All of a sudden, your favorite TV shows would be integrating some form of Olympic theme into what was going on. The news, of course, was talking about it. Your school would teach about the Olympiad and all the different events. Perhaps your gym class would incorporate some of the events you would see on TV into the gym class itself. All of these things were a huge cultural impact simultaneously across many different domains to let you know that something important was happening. But over time, two things have really combined to make the Olympics less and less of an interesting phenomenon. First, there's obviously the fact that they changed the format of the Olympics. The motivation behind that was obvious. It used to be that you had one Olympics every 4 years, and there was a summer games and a set of winter games. So the things that should, beach volleyball, you're going to be having in your summer games. Obviously, the luge is going to come in the winter games. These things were all happening in the same year, but they were divided by the seasons. And that gave the Olympics again this, oh, it's only every 4 years. This is something special. It matters when it happened. They decided to go ahead and break it up across two different events. So you have your summer games and then your winter games, but you have them every 2 years. So there's a summer games, 2 years break, winter games, 2 years break, summer games, 2 years break, winter games, 2 years break. The advantage of this for the people who want to make money, the Olympic Committee, and everybody who sees this as a way to drive tourism and attention to their country and everything, is that you could go ahead and maximize your profit. You could maximize the amount of attention, in theory, that the games would receive. You're constantly trying to get all these different nations and cities into the bidding about where the Olympics are going to be held. They have to pay an ostentatious amount of money. They build all of these different facilities. There's a massive economic game behind this, and that's before you even get to the fact that you have the television rights and the sports sponsorships and everything else that it's tied to it. So you understand from just an efficiency point, from a money making point, why you wanted to go ahead and change the way that you set up the Olympics so that you had this frequency. But the frequency, as so often is the case, actually was the death knell of this thing being interesting. The whole point was that it mattered when it rolled around. We had large breaks between the last time we had seen an Olympics. You only got to see so many Olympics during your lifetime. And so the events happening mattered. It really grabbed the entire culture simultaneously, especially as a kid. But when you went ahead and changed it to every 2 years, it just wasn't that special. It's constantly occurring. There's never really a year, it's only every other year without an Olympics. It didn't seem to matter as much. The fact that you had the summer in games every 4 years and the winter games every 4 years still, it didn't make as much as an impact as you would think, because just the frequency of the ceremonies and everything involved really mattered. So that was one aspect. But the more important aspect, the thing that really drained the Olympics of its gravitas, the idea that it meant something very serious to compete in the Olympics, is that originally the Olympics were a very nationalistic affair. The whole point of the Olympics was national pride. It was bringing people together, setting aside your differences. That was a huge part of it, to be sure. But when you got there, your differences were still played out on the athletic field. What you did on the athletic field mattered. People would have these different medal counts. Oh, my country has this many golds and this many silvers and this many bronze. We're beating you in total medals. Well, we're beating you in gold. That's where it really matters. No, this is the premier event, and the fact that we won this was a huge deal. These were things that people argued about incessantly. They thought were very important, stacking up against each other. It really built that camaraderie inside the United States and other nations. Everyone's rooting for their team, their people to go ahead and win. It really mattered. But slowly over time, we've dissolved what a nation is. We've dissolved what that means. And therefore, we have these mass immigration programs constantly. We're selecting immigrants specifically for their ability to fill a slot in a particular sport in the Olympics. And ultimately, what happens is so many of these teams end up having a lot of people on them that may or may not actually represent anyone from the nation. There used to be a reverse version of this where everyone came to the United States to, say, compete in the NBA or in the NHL or in the Major League Baseball. And then they would go back to their home countries for the Olympics. They would represent their home countries in the Olympics. So you would have the all-star basketball team from the United States, but some of the players wouldn't be there because they would go and compete in other sports or for other nations in the same sport because that was their home nation. You can say what you want about that, but there's still this idea that even if someone came to a professional sports league inside the United States, they were still a member of their original nation, and that was the nation they would represent when they went ahead and competed in the Olympics. But now, so many of these are permanent residents. They come in, they stay for a very long time. There's very little uh, home nation when it comes to the competition inside the Olympics. You're often cheering for someone who just joined your nation last year from another nation that is also competing in the Olympics. Often they were just competing for that other nation in the Olympics last year. And the fact that there's constantly this mass migration, that there's this headhunting for the best talent by so many different Olympic teams inside different countries means that really very few of the Olympic teams often represent a specific nation, and they all tend to just run together in this amalgamation of the best people that any given nation could compile from around the globe to compete while wearing their uniform. And this becomes a even more important problem when you're looking at a lot of these Western nations specifically that are trying to destroy the idea of nationalism, that see this as an anathema to their current political project. And so the idea that your nation would go ahead and celebrate something specific about themselves, a victory of their people, of some kind of accomplishment that is shared by their nation, that's almost seen as offensive, something of a bygone era. And really, all of these competitions just turn, instead of a battle of nation versus nation, looking for that national pride, looking to raise the awareness and validate the honor of the people that they are fighting for. Instead, it just ends up being another professional sports league where a bunch of people from around the globe all do kind of the same thing for kind of the same reason without any particular idea tied to this. You used to have these huge victories. The United States loves to tell these battles about kind of the miracle hockey team that came up against Russia, or the battle between kind of the American, or the dominance of the American basketball team and the other leagues. But really, how much does that matter after kind of the end of the Cold War, the end of the idea that there are these two empires battling against each other, and now we just have these homogenous economic zones that, or rather, uh, sorry, the mixed economic zones where anyone can enter. There is no homogeneity. There is no unified idea or identity. It's just the best headhunters could find in place under any given flag. And this is, I think, really what has lowered the excitement over the Olympics. There's also the fact that really we just lost that unifying entertainment culture that we used to have, that used to be a big part of the identity for a number of nations. When you don't have just a few TV stations, when anyone can watch anything all the time, and the value of something like sports is reduced in your culture, people just tend to start caring less. They could always go watch something else. It's not going to dominate. All of your favorite shows aren't canceled because of the Olympics being on NBC or ABC or whoever's hosting it. There's a little bit of a shift there as well. But I think the main thing really is the slow dissolving of nations. And so it's only appropriate that the kind of thing that has slowly dissolved nations should eventually take over the Olympics, which has itself basically unwound the idea that anyone belongs to any particular place, any particular people. It's all just a bunch of athletes competing at any given time. And really, that is the global religion of wokeness. As I've explained in several videos on this channel, as well as my book, The Total State, wokeness is not just a goofy idea that the left has. It's not just the current fad progressives are into before they switch to some other idea that will justify their rule. My friend, Academic Agent, and I have a bet going for a cigar about whether or not the woke will be put away. Uh, AA had felt pretty good, I guess, about some recent goings-ons. I'm not sure why. I think the ascension of Kamala Harris and the DEI presidential run pretty much seals the deal for me on this one, that the woke is not going anywhere. They're going to spend the entire year talking about how, you're too white, you're too male, you're too Christian, and actually you need to check all these other identity politics boxes in order to qualify for president. That's going to be the attack on Trump and JD Vance going forward. But in case I needed another point of data, in case I needed to go ahead and slam dunk the fact that I'm very sure that the woke is not going away, during the Olympics in the opening ceremony, they had drag queens everywhere because of course they did. They had to. You have to understand, they are compelled to do this. Their ideology demands it. This is not some quirky choice that they're making. This is not some short fad. This is the core of their ideology and they must spread it. So they did this whole routine. I'm not going to play any of it for a couple of reasons, one of which is they took it down. The Olympics went ahead and took the this part of the opening ceremony down because it was so offensive and there's such a terrible backlash against it. Two, because I just don't want to parade that stuff in front of you. I've got a little image so you can understand what I'm talking about here, but I'm really tired of seeing this stuff. I know you're really tired of seeing this stuff too. And I'd rather not be the person responsible flashing in front of you. It's enough to know that it happened. We don't have to stare at it all the time. It's just gross. But the reason that they did this, of course, was not just to put queens on display, though that was a big part of it, but they also wanted to mock Christianity. And so in this whole routine, which involved several different things, to be fair, during this routine, they also included basically a mockery of the Last Supper, the famous picture of Christ right before he is crucified. And of course, the drag queens are up there. They include a child, by the way, because of course they do. And I'm obviously not going to show this to you, but during this, one of the drag queens exposed himself. His genitals were exposed on this around the child, of course, because this is the celebration that they're looking for. This is what they are celebrating at the new global summit. This is, now that we're dissolving the nations, now that the Olympics is no longer nation versus nation, but is really just this homogenous blob of people who could be from anywhere competing in a sport for some nondescript reason. We have to go ahead and foist this upon the public. So like I said, I think this is a inevitable shift. I want to go deeper into why this shift is inevitable, why this ideology sits at the core of managerial globalism. But before I do that, guys, let me tell you a little bit about Birch Gold. Hey guys, I need to tell you about today's sponsor, Birch Gold. If you haven't been following the news, a massive hit in the US dollar just came in June when Saudi Arabia didn't renew its 50-year petrodollar deal with the US. Since 1974, Saudi Arabia has sold oil solely in US dollars, and that's been a huge boon to our global economic dominance. Now they want options other than US dollars. So you have to ask yourself, if there's less demand for the dollar, then what happens to the dollar? Look, it's reasons like this that Americans turn to Birch Gold Group. For over 20 years, Birch Gold has helped tens of thousands of Americans protect their savings by converting an IRA or 401k into an IRA in physical gold. To learn more, text the word Auron to 989898 and claim your free no obligation kit on gold. That's Auron to the number 989898. Birch Gold has earned trust with their education first approach, their thousands of happy customers, and their countless 5-star reviews. So protect your savings with gold before the dollar plunges any further. Text Auron to 989898 today. So, like I said, I have dove into why wokeness is not some strange aberration, but is actually key to the globalization project. It's one of the things that drives globalization. And so it's inevitable that not only can this not be put away, that this becomes center stage on an event like the Olympics. And the reason that wokeness is so important to the managerial project is that the managerial project requires the slow dissolution of all nations. It needs to go ahead and dismantle what it means to be a part of a nation, because managerialism demands homogenization, it demands this continuous turning of all cultures and all peoples into one gray goo that can be ruled through managerial procedures. Managerialism is based on massification, it's based on the reign of quantity. It wants people to be the same, uniform, so that it can create a uniform set of procedures that can always answer questions, always manipulate people, always drive processes, never need to be appealed to by any outside force. That is the template on which managerialism builds its power. Like a cog in a machine, when it comes to a conveyor belt, in an assembly line, you need everything to be uniform. You don't want one weird little gear here and one strange widget over there. You want to be able to replace parts as quickly as possible. You even want to turn the humans on an assembly line into machines. They only do one thing, they do it very specifically. They don't change anything, there's no alterations, and you could switch out that person at any time with a little bit of training, add another person, and boom, you have exactly the same operation. This is what managerialism does. It dehumanizes people in order to build a standard set of procedures that can rule anyone, when no matter where they come from, because you've eliminated all of the things that make them unique, makes their culture unique, makes their the firmament, or rather the substrate from which they arose, unique. You eliminate all of that so you can constantly operate in this very uniform manner that builds a high degree of efficiency and therefore surplus. That is what managerialism wants to do. And it wants to do it, take the same assembly line process that you use to make the Model T cheaper and more efficient, and take that Model T and apply it to people. It's the same process. And so when you go to these global organizations, when you're looking at these global organizations, they want to wear away the particularities of any given culture. And as Sam Francis points out in Leviathan and its Enemies, it is a cosmopolitan and hedonistic culture that is most easily replicable across all given peoples. These are kind of the base, most crass desires of people. These are the things that are most uniformly able to be brought out. And if you can wear away all of the religious or traditional ideas of what a family is, what a man or a woman is, what a culture should be, how religions should operate, then it makes it much easier to manage people. That's why you get transgender ads in India from Starbucks. That's not an accident. That's a feature, not a bug. The same thing is here true in the Olympics, right? You have the Olympics enacting this religious ritual, and they claim that this is supposed to be Bacchanalia, right? That this is a celebration of a pagan ritual, which in and of itself would be enough, but specifically, it would not have ended with a rendition of the Last Supper if that was the only intention. But the reason that you go through this ritual and you push this ideology is because it is the ideology of globalism. It is what is supposed to dissolve all of those social mores you have, all of those religious particularities, all those cultural hangups you have that might keep you from being the perfect consumer and the perfect worker. All of that has to go so that they can create this society where everyone can be managed with the same set of standards, the same set of techniques. You need this cosmopolitan, hedonistic culture that is easily manipulated. Everyone is has abandoned the future. They don't care about their legacy. They don't care about their nation. They don't care about their people. They don't care about their family. They don't care about their language. They don't care about their religion. All of that has been dissolved. Everyone has been turned into this sexless, childless, familyless, religionless blob that you can just push and pull the knobs on. You can just give them a new identity, a new belief set. You can turn them around and make them the ultimate NPC. They are highly programmable because there is nothing left of their original culture, of their original belief system to hinder the constant change of information, the constant flow of propaganda that will redirect their consciousness one way or another. This is the goal. And this is why wokeness is not going away. There is no off ramp. There is no toning it down. Yeah, you might get some cycles where they're not pushing every single part of this as loudly as humanly possible, but the general trend will always be towards this stuff. That we this stuff. It will always be towards this kind of display because this kind of display is necessary. This is what, and of course, they truly believe in this. They are true believers. Should it be obvious to anyone putting on a show like this that would be offensive to a massive block of people, specifically, obviously, religious Christians? Billions of people should be offended at this. Well, if you were putting on, if you're only about the money, right? We're only motivated by the material aspects of this. If it's all about the money and the power, wouldn't you just put on the most crowd pleasing display possible? Why would you push something like this? Why would you force something like this into the celebration? And the answer is because they believe it, because they really do believe it. This is a religious ritual for them. This is real for them. Is it a real religion in the sense that it brings meaning or purpose, that it has a definitive uh, uh, definitive change that's positive on the way that people form their lives, that it creates an order that benefits the people? No, it's none of those things. So if you're like, well, wokeness isn't a real religion because it lacks many of these, okay, that's fine. But obviously, it is filling the role of a religion. It is taking the role of it. Yes, a cheap, crass, gross religion. Absolutely. But a religion nonetheless. And so these people believe in it, they value it. And if you have a religion you really believe in, you put it at the front of the things that you do. You celebrate it in your opening ceremonies. That's the most basic understanding of religion. And once again, we see that the removal of religion, the separation of church and state, does not actually create a, a space without religion, because humans are deeply religious people, because spirituality is real. You are not just a body. The world is not just a material space. There are forces outside of what you can see and touch and taste, all of your five senses. There is more to life than just the material. That is just a reality, and no level of denial will stop that from being the case. You can pretend that you're super rational and super modern and well beyond all these crazy beliefs, and guess what? It doesn't matter, because this stuff keeps exploding back into view. It keeps reasserting itself over and over again because spirituality is real. This is a real spiritual warfare that's actually happening. And when you leave a space and you pretend that there's just no overriding spirituality that's going to invest itself in any given celebration, any given competition, any given ritual, then eventually something like this will take your space. There is no void here. Nature abhors a vacuum here. It will be filled with something, and it will be filled with the globalist religion that is now being paraded in front of you at the Olympics. It really is that simple. And no amount of elite machinations, no amount of nefarious hand wringing, no clever plotting can ever truly escape this aspect of human nature. It will always return, it will always dominate. That doesn't mean you can't analyze it with power, right? I'm saying specifically, this religion is necessary because of the way that managerial power works. So it's not that the power and the belief are separate. It's not that the ideology and the mechanisms of power are completely disconnected. But it is their very connection that means that you cannot isolate one and discard the other. You can't say it's all just power and then the ideology comes after. It's all just power and then they make up whatever religion they need to. Nope. Sorry. These things happen simultaneously. You also can't just remove the power and say, oh, it's just the belief, it's just the ideology. Power has nothing to do with it. Both of those will fail you. That analysis will fail. What matters is the interaction between the two. And we can see in the Olympics right here the willingness to go ahead and throw this in the face of Christians. Now, there's a lot of question about how you should react to this. Some people said, "Oh, well, you shouldn't act offended. You shouldn't act offended that your religion was mocked, because that just feeds these people. It makes them sound like they're very powerful. It makes it sound like they have total control." and you're just giving in to them, calling something like this satanic, that just feeds its power. I understand that position. I understand what people like that are saying. However, you'll notice that no one is going to do this with Mohammed. No one is ever going to do this mockery. They're never going to take a bunch of drag queens, dressed up as major Islamic figures, and go ahead and reenact some part of some legend in the Muslim religion so that they can mock them. That's never going to happen. And it's not just because Christianity is the sworn enemy of these people, though that is a huge part of it. These people hate Christianity, and they are very explicit. It is Christianity they hate. It is not religion. They're not doing this with Jewish beliefs. They're not doing this with Muslim beliefs. They're not doing this with any other group. They're specifically targeting Christians for a reason, because it's the foundational ethos of the West. It is the foundational belief of the West, and that is what they're trying to destroy and dismantle. That's what they're trying to do. But they're also not going to do it with Muslims, because they know there would be a very serious and probably dangerous backlash to the people who did it. They respect that religion because that religion demands respect. So is the solution to simply back away and laugh? Well, I think there should be a good amount of laughter. You should mock these elites as gross, as ugly, as sad. I think that is worth it. But I don't think that the answer is just pretending like you don't care. Like this doesn't matter. That the blasphemy, the ridicule, these things, just, it's not a big deal. Because to do that, you have to enter a state of nihilism. You have to say, well, I don't really care ultimately if someone's slandering this. It doesn't really matter to me. And that's kind of what faith is built on, is that these things do matter, that you are willing to sacrifice them over them, that you are willing to get offended. How is not getting offended working for people? Has that shifted anything? Is the Barstool Republican, or Barstool conservative version of right-wing politics working out? Is that making any serious gains? I don't think so. I think there's probably a line, to walk somewhere here. I think there's probably a balancing act between, we don't care about this at all, and you can just do whatever you want, and we'll just, we've given up ever caring about people mocking our religion anymore. And oh, these people are complete in control of everything. They're omnipotent. They have this power over every organization because they're evil and satanic or whatever. And so therefore, we are just completely doomed, and it's this humiliation ritual. Somewhere there is, these people are ridiculous. These people are sad. They should be mocked. But it's not okay for them to do this, and we should take it seriously, and there should be a certain level of outrage combined in that mockery. I think there is a tone you can hit there that does both. But I think that, like I said, ultimately the key takeaway here is the woke isn't going anywhere. It is a religion that is central to the process of globalization. It is inextricable from the managerial style and its spread across many nations. And you're only going to see it intensify until this thing kind of comes apart. I want to go ahead and get into the censorship of Trump, or rather the attempt to censor what has happened to Trump by big tech. But before we do, guys, let's hear about job stacking. Hey guys, let me tell you about today's sponsor, job stacking. More paychecks, less hustle, working from home. That's what job stacking is all about. If you're a remote or hybrid worker looking to maximize your earning potential, then consider joining the Job Stacking Mentorship Program. The program is designed by Ralph Haltza, the creator of Job Stacking, to help you successfully implement a strategy that will allow you to collect multiple paychecks from different jobs without burning out or getting caught by employers. Job stacking has already helped many people double or even triple their incomes. Luke Hill, a financial analyst living in the UK, has used job stacking to stack 3 different jobs and went from making $5K a month to $15K a month. But job stacking isn't just about increasing incomes. It's also about helping our guys gain more independence by no longer being a slave to debt or a single employer who hates their values. Andrew Gustafsson, a credit analyst from Australia, is now stacking 4 salaries, which he has used to pay off his personal and student debt and buy a home for his family. If you don't currently have a remote job, no worries. The program is also designed to help you land remote jobs so that you can go ahead and get started. So if you want to double your income and stop relying on a single paycheck from a woke employer, go to jobstacking.com/start now. That's jobstacking.com/start now and book a call with Rolf today. All right, so the other big story that's been bouncing around this weekend has been the number of people looking into different search engines, different AIs, different big tech creations, and finding that it was increasingly difficult to produce search results when it came to the assassination of Donald Trump, or the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. Several different people brought this up. I think this is America 2121 did this graphic, but uh, even guys like Ted Cruz were getting in on it. A lot of people were posting that they were going to multiple different search sites. It wasn't just Google, though Google was the primary target, but multiple different search sites where they were attempting to search for Donald Trump's attempted assassination information on it, this kind of thing, and they were getting nothing. They're no matter how, even if they got deep into the autocomplete, you still didn't see this coming up. Now, this might seem like a minor thing. You might say to yourself, Oren, everybody knows this happened. Everybody saw this. This has been the biggest news story in a long time. Obviously, people are aware of this, so you can't memory hole something this big. Can you? The answer is yeah, of course you can, guys. It's not that people won't know that this happened. Obviously, some level of awareness that this has occurred will exist in most people's minds, but you need to remember the trick that happens with modern information and propaganda. The trick is not necessarily to hide any given piece of information. The trick is to drown it. You don't have to do the 1984 thing where you go in and edit every little bit of information, though obviously we've seen big tech do that. So I'm not saying that doesn't happen. Actually, it happens all the time. But the real trick, the one that's less obvious, because it's super obvious when you edit these things, they get called out. It becomes very clear that that's happened. The other option, the option that is more effective, is to drown the information constantly. When we have the news cycles the way we do, when we turn over information the way that we do in the modern world, it's very easy for people to lose track of when and how things happened, how intense things were. So if you constantly bury things under waves and waves of propaganda, people forget. For instance, people forget that in 2008, Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton both said that they believed in the traditional definition of marriage, that California, one of the most liberal states in the nation, voted against gay marriage. That not that long ago, less than 2 decades ago, it was an anathema for the most left wing party in the world, in the United States, and the most left wing state in the United States to embrace something that now, if you don't agree with, you'll get fired from any given company. People forget that because there's just been this constant stream of propaganda that has buried that reality. They forget that that's the country they lived in not that long ago. And they believe that because they've watched all the TV shows and the movies and that they've read all the books that have told them otherwise, this basically is an ancient position in the past, in the far past. And there's no way that any modern civilization could actually believe it. That constant stream of propaganda buries the story. Same thing happens when it comes to, say, police shootings, right? The difference between the police shooting of an unarmed white man and the police shooting of an unarmed black man is that no one is going to magnify and pick up the police shooting of an unarmed white man. It's not like it doesn't happen. It's not like it doesn't happen on as frequently, you know. It's that you are not going to focus on that shooting, and you are instead going to focus on the shooting of a, a black man instead. This is what the left wants to promote, and so that's what they will promote. That's what they'll keep in the forefront of everyone's minds through the constant stream of propaganda, and they will roll over those stories. So, for instance, Cannon Hinton. If you don't remember, this is a child who was murdered randomly just because he was out about on a bike. He was shot in the face, but the assailant was a black man and the child was a white man. So no one cares. No one talks about it. There's no one's going to have a riot on his behalf. No one is going to paint murals of him or do statues of him because the left isn't constantly blasting with the propaganda. In fact, over and over again, a story like that is completely buried. Nobody talks about it. The news cycle just moves on. So controlling what is in the news cycle, what comes up in search results, that matters. It changes people's perception. It's not that out there somewhere you couldn't find the story of Cannon hidden, but it's the fact that his story is buried as opposed to where George Floyd's is everywhere. That is actually a big deal. So when the big tech companies go ahead and change the way that you search for things, when they make it more and more difficult for something like Donald Trump's assassination to pop up, that's not a mistake. This is the most relevant search for this topic. This is what everyone, it's the most current news. It's what everyone wants to know when they type this into the search bar. And the fact that that is not the first thing that comes up is a very purposeful choice. If you try to look for common words all the time, or even historical events, and a movie has been made about them, or some song or video game has been made about them, that pops up before the actual historical event. It happens all the time when I have to do Google searches. I look up some kind of event, and if I look for something that is very relevant, instead I get a movie or a video game or a TV show that has been made about it. The most current thing dominates the search results, even though the historical thing is far more significant and has existed for a much longer time. So in the current news search results, that should dominate any of these other historical examples. But it's not just that it's not dominating historical examples, it's that it's actively being suppressed at all. It's very difficult to have it autocomplete in many scenarios. Now, social media companies can go back and cover their tracks on this kind of stuff. They can tweak their algorithms. One of the nice things about this is the plausible deniability. It's very simple to go back, hit a few keystrokes, uncensor something, and say, "Oh, well, we don't know what you're talking about. This is fine. See, you can search it down. It's just fine." They can try to erase this technique, and it's very easy to lie about it because their algorithms are not public. We don't get to see how these search results are parsed. But it's not just the search results. AI is a huge deal because AI in many ways will become search results soon. The AI is going to replace search results in many ways. Billboard Chris on Twitter showed how the Meta AI identified Donald Trump's assassination as a false event, a conspiracy theory, a lie, which is an amazing thing because, of course, the left has created a conspiracy theory about Donald Trump's attempted assassination where actually he wasn't hit by a bullet. He was hit by a chunk of some screen. There's some shard of glass that was actually what hit him and not the bullet itself. Obviously, you can see the picture with the bullet flying. Like you have to have a massive amount of conspiratorial buy-in in order to believe this. Well, the left is pushing it everywhere. They want people to believe that there was no assassination attempt because it looks very bad for them. And instead, they want people to believe that there was some kind of, the conspiracy, it was a fake, or that, maybe, it was a shard of glass. He was never really hit, so it's less heroic. These are all things that these people need to believe. And so they're pushing this idea. And there's a reason that they want to suppress more and more any truth about that. They don't want people finding the facts. They want people to go to AI and hear that, oh, well, maybe this is it. Maybe it never really happened, right? If you don't think that can happen, if you don't think, oh, well, no one would be dumb enough to go ahead and program their AI this way or their search engine this way, that'll make their search engine bad, right? That'll make their AI bad. Who would purposely tank their product? What corporation would purposely tank the accuracy of their product just for an ideology, right? We don't believe that ideology rules things. We believe in power. It's all power. It's all money. It's all power. Ideology doesn't rule this stuff. Except if you remember, not that long ago, just a few months ago, Google released an AI that completely eliminated white people from history. Just took them out of history. You couldn't get a white person in several different scenarios. In fact, it inserted diversity even in some non-white scenarios, like making sure that you could only get black samurai in certain, or ninjas in certain searches. But it often went ahead and put awkward scenarios where you had diversity included in, say, SS officers from World War II. And so that's the main reason that Google ended up pulling it down. Not that it replaced every piece of European nobility with a black person like it's a Netflix show, but that it ultimately awkwardly put diversity into historical events that were seen as very bad and therefore shouldn't have any people of color in them. That's actually what got it taken down. But if you're under the impression that no big tech company would do this kind of censorship, that they would never alter these results, that they would never go ahead and worsen their product in the pursuit of some kind of ideological goal, all of the evidence is kind of stacked against you, actually. It's like wokeness is the overriding ideology, and that's what drives even corporations that are supposed to be fixated entirely on power and money. And instead, eventually, even if uh, they had originally bought into that ideology simply for power or monetary gain, ultimately what happens is the ideology ends up driving the bus. And when it comes to AI or these algorithms, it's ideology that drives them as well, because these things are only ever a reflection of the people who created them. That's all they're capable of doing. In fact, there's a lot of effort made by these AI creators to make them as dumb as possible so that they don't take in any non approved ideological functions. If you remember Tay and the death of Tay, because Tay kept absorbing too many ideas that weren't pre approved by the progressive mainstream. AI kept learning things it wasn't supposed to learn. It kept coming to conclusions it's not allowed to come to. And so they needed to put AI safety in charge, make sure that there were a lot of restrictions so that this didn't continue to break through the control of the AI. These people are absolutely interested in dumbing down and controlling their products to make sure that they conform to ideology and not anything else. So I think we're going to probably continue to see this. Now, I will say this. There are a lot of people who started getting down on this, right? That the fact that the Kamala Harris campaign has exploded on the news, that they've been hyping Harris, and that they've been burying what happened to Trump, and the people getting really depressed and blackpilled about this. I find that shocking. Look, guys, yes, it's very frustrating that the media has that level of narrative control in theory, but in practice, they are pushing so hard and so awkwardly and so artificially. They are doing everything they can. They are cheating at every opportunity, and it is so obvious that it is breaking down what's left of their credibility. I know we've heard this a million times. Oh, finally, the last piece of credibility will fall, and then all of a sudden the normies will see. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that this will bring about the mass conversion of everyone who finally sees the lies that are being paraded in front of them. What I am saying is you can only put forward this level of effort at artificial reality manipulation for so long. And the fact that everyone can see it now, it's so obvious, it's so painful, means that it is failing. It is not doing well. So I think that while it is very frustrating to see the lengths to which these people will go, how shameless they are, how unhinged they are, and how ideologically obsessed they are, ultimately, this is a demonstration of their weakness, not their strength. If they had strength, they wouldn't need to go to this level. They wouldn't have completely lost control of these narratives. They wouldn't be trying to push Kamala Harris, of all people. If these people had a clue, if they were really in control of things, if they were capable, if they were smart, they would not have backed themselves into a corner where they have to try to sell Kamala Harris and where they have to try to bury the assassination of a presidential candidate. If they were in masterful control of every one of these things, they would not be in this situation. So let's not blackpill about this. Let's recognize this for the desperation move by the regime that it is, not some excuse to talk about how, oh, these guys have all the power and all the control. Yes, they have a vast amount of resources. Yes, it is important for people to understand the level at which the opinions they consume are controlled by this force, by the total state. But ultimately, the desperate way that this is unfolded really shows that these people are not professionals. They are not smart. They are not capable, or they would not have put themselves in this position. And they are captives of their own ideology, or again, we would not see them continually returning to disastrous ideologies and positions and candidates. They would not do that if they were able to control, they were able to drive the narrative entirely on their own, if they were not subject to their own disastrous belief system. All right, guys, we're going to move over to the questions of the people here real quick. Cooper Weirdo says the Olympics are happening. Oh man, I missed out on a gay man representing America talking about how much he hates Trump. Also, look at the woke the woke getting put away. It's almost completely gone. Yes, again, so technically, I think at some point I did say that if Kamala Harris becomes the candidate, I would just lose automatically. I did that as kind of a throwaway joke because I thought the idea that Harris would eventually actually inherit this, that they would not find someone else in a pinch, was too absurd. Obviously, that's not how it played out. So if academic agent wants to hold me to that caveat, he can. So he can win on a technicality. He can get the TKO if he wants, and he may need to take that option because it's very clear that otherwise he's toast. I mean, between the ascension of the DEI presidency, where all we're going to hear is the white, if you haven't seen the white woman for Kamala and the white men for Kamala Zoom meetings that these people are doing, where they go through these struggle sessions about how they need to go ahead and atone for their whiteness by supporting Kamala Harris. That's going to be going on until November. Sorry about that, AA. Like that's going to be a obvious and constant wokeness in your face throughout this entire presidential run. Also, we're going to continue to see the ideology get pushed when it comes to drag queens and everything else. So this stuff's just not going anywhere. So he might need to take the technical out because after the the 1-2 punch of the Kamala Harris presidency and the Olympics, I don't really know how you continue to hold on to this theory. Cripper Weirdo says, fun fact, France had a massive blackout. There was a building that remained well lit. You'll never guess which building it was. Yeah, sorry, I don't really know much about that one. There's probably a joke involved there, but I'm not familiar. Let's see here. Glow in the Dark says, guess we could go back to 4 years intervals. Maybe a 5-year interval would be nicer. Everyone could instinctually know that it was on 2025, 2030. Yeah, the 4-year one was a little strange for our mind that is based entirely on kind of these sets of 10. I mean, leaves our brain, wanting those rounder numbers. But obviously that's tied to, I guess, original tradition. So that's obviously a little more appealing to people who want to harken back all the way to the actual Olympics here. Tiny Stupid Demon says, do I need to remind you everyone that Marquis de Sade was French? Yeah, obviously the idea that there was not a certain level of Frenchness, I suppose, to a decadent ceremony like that. You have a fair point there. Alexander says, I was devastated for the whole weekend after watching the ceremony. Although I know we're at war, to witness it so directly is audacious. It changed something inside of me the same way 2020 did. Well, I'll say this. I understand seeing this and being, uh, being disturbed, being appalled, but I would not be devastated. This is something that's been going for a long time. This is exactly what you'd expect. It's sad, but at the same time, I think this is where it's better that it be mocked or that it be pushed back against. Don't let these people devastate you. Be offended into getting them to pull it down. That works. That actually had an impact. Mock them to make them look ridiculous, but don't be devastated. These people are going to continue to try to sully all of these things that were part of some kind of grand tradition. And really, what you have to do is go back to making your own traditions, things that are more local, things that are more particular, things that they do not have a hold of. You want to replace this stuff with things that really matter rather than getting devastated that destroying things that are too far away for you to actually be involved in. Florida Henry says, since the 2020 riots were mostly peaceful protests, I haven't watched a single sporting event and I feel much better. Boomers, cons will still give their money to athletes who hate them, though. So I'll say this: there's a level of which I'm with you here. I started watching a little bit of football last year, and then the NFL reminded me that they hated me. I was like, oh yeah, this is why I stopped watching, and I went back to not watching it. However, there is also an impulse for some people on kind of the more online right to say, oh, the sports ball. Oh, the idiots, the boomers with their sports ball, the bros with their sports ball. And there is a little bit of the nerd that got stuffed in the locker to that response. There's nothing new about watching sports. In fact, many of the most august, most storied, most celebrated civilizations throughout history were obsessed with sports. I mean, the Byzantine Empire, literally they have riots that would overthrow rulers based on their sports. That is a level of excess. I'm with you. But I do think that there's something very natural and normal about being interested in sports. It's better to play them yourselves. It's better to be involved in a sport than spend all day sitting on the couch watching a sport. The guy who's sitting there watching 15 hours of NFL a week, yeah, that's a problem. That's not great. But I do think the complete rejection of sports is itself also an issue. But again, this is something where shrinking things back down to a more local level, maybe the high school football game in your area becomes more of an important deal than everyone sitting alone and isolated on their couch screaming about overpaid athletes that hate them. Returning to something that is far more local and regional and is about the pride in the area you live in and the people that you're a part of, as opposed to this disembodied, highly commodified uh, version of sports. That there's some good to that. Creepy Weirdo says, you are not a body with a soul. You are a soul with a body." C.S. Lewis. Uh, yeah, I'm not sure what specific quote that's coming from. I think the more important thing is that you are both. That your body, while you are here on Earth, is an integral part of who you are, as is your soul. The Gnostic mistake is always to treat the soul as the completely independent thing, and the body is just the meat suit. There's also the mistake of course, being just raw materialism and saying it's just the body and the soul is an aberration, or it's a delusion, or it's it's just something that we manifest to make ourselves feel better. It's just the sum total of our cognitive processes, but doesn't have anything to do with anything outside of the material. These are both mistakes. I think it's important to remember that you are both a soul and a body, at least while you're here. Jose Velasquez with just a super chat. Thank you very much, sir. Glow in the Dark says, "Does anyone remember program Fast and Furious?" The gun running. Yes, the gun running program. I do remember that, but I'm not sure what it had to do with any given thing we were talking about there. Creeper Weirdo says, the well being the well lit building was a church, Orin. Oh, okay. The only thing that stayed on, the only light that stayed on was a church. Okay, I can see. All right. Well, then in that context, yes, I can understand why that would be a significant sign. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you, everyone, for stopping by. As always, it's a pleasure to speak with you. If it's your first time on this channel, make sure that you go ahead and subscribe, turn on the notifications, click the bell to make sure that you are getting all of these broadcasts when they go live. If you would like to go ahead and get these broadcasts as podcasts, you need to make sure to subscribe to the Auron MacIntyre Show on your favorite podcast platform. And when you do leave a reading or leave a rating or a review, it helps with the algorithm. Same as well, if you decide to pick up my book, The Total State, on Amazon, leaving a rating or review very much helps there. And of course, you can also pick up the book on places or at places like Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, or you could order it at your local bookstore. Thank you, everyone, for watching. And as always, I will talk to you next time.